The Spanish 1916 short rifle converted to 7.62 NATO. Alright? And again, guys, I'd like to ask to help with the algorithms. Please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps the channel get stronger. Thanks. Alright, so we had our two Spanish guns, FR7, FR8. Those were specifically laid out to train Spanish soldiers how to use the sights on the semi-rifle system so the government could have time to produce enough to arm, completely replace weapons for the army. But the Spanish also converted a ton of these old 7mm. Okay, this is the 1916, and this one I think was one of the last ones that came in. Okay, and you will find many old Spanish bolt-action rifles, 93 actions, all different variations in that were rebarreled and converted to 7.62 NATO. So the question arises, why did they do it? Why are all these old guns being converted to 7.62 NATO? Alright. It comes to training. I think the Spanish army wanted all their soldiers trained in marksmanship. And we all know the story. The guy from Inner Arms went to Spain back in the 60s or some 70s and bought all the obsolete guns and ammunition and brought it back to his shop. Okay, so probably at that point in time, that's when Spain probably sold all the old guns that weren't converted and the ammunition, 9mm Largo and all this other. That's where you still find stores of this stuff coming in, or you still find this stuff floating around. Okay, so most European armies have a mandatory government service. Okay, so young men that are qualified are taken, and they do 2.5 years. So I believe the reason the Spanish converted all these guns into 7.62 NATO is at a certain point in time, this is what they're using, but to train, like when I was in the Navy, the only live firing we did in basic training was with 1911s with a Colt Ace adapter with our 22 adapter. We fired, but it was 22s. Okay. To train people in marksmanship, these old rifles do, and it has also been converted to the standard caliber, which is the Army's caliber, 7.62 NATO. I guess Spain is a NATO country. Okay. So it makes sense. This is the Civil Guard. So also, the local law enforcement, the National Guard or police or whatever, I'm not quite sure what Civil Guard, Guard de Civil is, the National Police Force or whatever, also had these rifles. Why? Save costs. They don't need a frontline battle rifle, the cops, but they may need a rifle. So these filled the position. And the Spanish did convert many of these different models. Okay, so again, the people bring up the argument they only use the low-powered set-me ammo in these guns and everything else, and I don't believe that's the case. At one time when I was studying gunsmithing, you could buy barrels. What people used to do is buy these old guns for the action, even if it was used up. Pull the barrel off, put a new barrel, drill and tap it for a scope and all this other stuff. And that's how, when you went to gunsmithing school, that was a project. You could get barrels, okay? And if you look at all the military cartridges, 7mm Mauser, the 6.5 by 55 Mauser, the 30-06, the 8mm and that, all of these cartridges will fit in a receiver without really having, because they're all about the same length. So modifying this for the older, longer cartridges, as is. Okay, this does have an adapter and stuff in there. Would work. All you do is pull off the barrel. They're all a standard thread size, and this is a small ring, and the 98s were considered a large ring. And you could buy brand new barrels, just a plain barrel for having a scope-mounted rifle, in a whole assortment of calibers. In other words, you could rechamber these to 30-06 or whatever. So they wouldn't make them or do that if the actions couldn't handle it. Okay? So that's another thing nobody brings up. And a lot of this is just, like I said in the other video about the FR7, a lot of this in the discussions, and people are adamant about it, and there's this cartridge only was rated for a certain PSI, and this is a different PSI, and eventually this will happen, and and they go on and on and on, and it's a big thing, and people get bent out of shape. Much like, and this is something, okay, that I like to bring up. I like to make videos, and I like to collect guns, okay? I am not telling you I'm an expert. I don't know everything about these. People sometimes ask me questions, and I just tell them I can't answer that because I don't know. I never did any research. I never studied it. I never owned that weapon, and I've never used one, okay? I found this strange thing that, I don't know if it's just the internet or the way we communicate now. People get particular, touchy, and argumentative over things that clip magazine. Okay, that's one of them. There's people who made 20-minute videos about this. Clip magazine. Okay. Supposedly, if I ever say this clip, okay, pistol clip, we used to call pistol magazine a clip. Just put a clip in there. Okay. Unofficially, it means the same thing. Okay. But now people, well, it's a magazine, and if you don't call it that, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. That's a bit of a, that's where you're getting, like, with political correctness, the technical correctness is ridiculous. And to me, like I said, I'm just a guy that likes guns, and I've called magazines clips for years. And actually a friend of mine said they both mean the same thing. If I said, hey, hand me a clip, the guy would hand me a box magazine or AR-15 mag or a pistol mag, if you want to get technical, and put it in there. So a lot of this, especially around these guns not being safe, if somebody went and said, hey, I had a universal receiver, tested the pressure, know the pressures, and then again, these are old guns. Nobody's going to spend the time and money to do the research, though there is the one point, there was an article that somebody went and did destructive testing on these weapons and said that the 93 action can handle up to 90,000 psi before it fails or stretches out or whatever. So, and then again, like I said, even if the pressure is a tad bit high, you would have to fire 3,000 rounds or so before you'd start to get in danger or actually see the thing failing, depending on, age and use. And there's no way to measure it because you don't know how much use this gun got in its original shape, okay? It's been rebarreled to a new caliber, so, this gun could have been shot a lot. This gun could have stayed in Iraq and was really never used over the years. Okay, you don't know. Alright, so that's why trying to gauge these things like something new production, you know, you can't. But I don't believe, again, that these countries would make these guns like this. And this one here, I was looking at the magazine again on this one, and you see it kind of moves up forward. The whole mag moves. I loaded up this gun with 5 rounds, and I mean, this thing cycled through smooth. Okay, not a single hiccup, fast, quick, and, you know, better than the FR8 and the FR7. So this gun really is neat. This is good. I'm going to want to get out and shoot this thing. And this one's in good shape. I've seen some that came in that were in way worse condition than this, both the bore and the hole outside. Okay, so that's another thing. Condition is another issue with all these old guns. This one I bought it sight unseen on an online auction. Very pleased with it. Okay, and that's just part of this hobby. So that's my thoughts on this. This is going to be fun to shoot, and you, like I said, you will find other variations and models that have been converted to 7.62 NATO. And I believe they use them to train their recruits and troops in marksmanship. You know, plus they're using the new production standard ammo. Okay, that's why they were converted, because I believe they phased it all out at one point, where the 7mm, you know, because after 20 years, the ammunition is cycled out, sold off as surplus. Okay, it's not stored longer than 20 years. So that answers a lot of questions there. Okay, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and like I said, go easy, and I will, if you remember, make for those of you that still feel that way, I will develop a low pressure load or reduced load for the 7.62 NATO. Alright, thanks.